light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. It seems within our current time there are certain people who want to play king of the hill, so to speak. What matters to them more than anything is power and control. And so they create programs and policies and, well, in some cases they become laws, but they're laws in the sense of a directive that is passed by a legislative body and everyone's supposed to live by it. And I kind of roll my eyes at that because I don't know of too many laws that are actually universally respected. And I don't know how much people even expect to respect them, which makes it a little odd to call them laws. It's like saying the speed limit is 55 miles an hour in a certain place, and that's the law. And how many people actually go only 55, and how many people are speeding? So it kind of makes a mockery of the idea of a law. And there's lots of other examples like that, where the law says you do this, and lo and behold, 50 to 90% of the population isn't doing it that way. But all of that being noted and accepted, the point to me that's more important is to come back to prioritizing people over programs. The reason laws were written in the first place was because there was a problem, and somebody thought that if we all do it this way, then it won't be a problem anymore. And so they try to create these one-size-fits-all answers. And the problem with one-size-fits-all answers is that they don't really fit anyone all that well. There has to be, or there ideally would be, room for discernment and room for varying things according to the need of the moment. One of the exceptions, for example, is we have a speed limit, okay? Except if you're racing to the hospital, suddenly it's not as important to stay within the speed limit, but it becomes an issue of safety. Did you turn your flashers on? Are you honking the horn the whole way so that everybody knows to get out of the way? And if there's a police officer who sees you go speeding by, perhaps they'll even pull in front of you and turn on their siren and lights and guide you to the hospital so that you can get someone in the seat next to you who, he looks over, and he or she looks over and sees that you have an injured person in your car, and so begins running the sirens to clear the path to get this person to the hospital as soon as possible. Suddenly, our laws aren't so much black and white, set in stone, as they are flexible according to the needs of the moment. The challenge of that is remembering that really that kind of applies to all laws, because a law is a one-size-fits-all answer. And if we prioritize the people over the programs, the people over the policies, that we created a way of doing things and said everyone should do it this way because we thought that would be best. Except that then we keep finding exceptions, and so we have to find ways to make allowances for the exceptions if we prioritize the people. If you're willing to let the person die as long as the law is maintained, there'll be a lot more people dying if the law is that inflexible. There'll be a lot more people with a lot more problems, and the laws won't be solving the problem they were originally intended to solve. If it's, as some people have said, the expression, the tail wagging the dog, when people are made to serve their policies instead of their policies serving the people. And only by looking at the people and listening to the people and figuring out what their needs actually are, can we make laws and policies that are truly effective. And otherwise, they're sabotaging the very things that they're supposed to be protecting. There's people who are supposed to be saved by going to a particular hospital, but they can't get in because the policy says that they have to have this qualification or that characteristic, and so people wind up dying. At one point in time, there were racially segregated hospitals, And if you weren't the right race, you couldn't go to that hospital. You had to go the one way over there, and you might die before you get there. And and it could go both ways, because if a white person was injured and needed a hospital right now, and the nearest white hospital was way over there, but there was a black hospital closer, maybe within certain parts of the South in the past, the southeastern United States, that the white person wanted to go to the white hospital, wouldn't go to the black hospital, so they died. And vice versa. It could be a black person who needed to be able to go to a white hospital so that they could be saved and then, if necessary, transferred. But the priority needed to be on saving their life. That was what the hospitals were for. Anymore, I have to wonder what hospitals are for, because I went to an emergency room at one point and I was told they didn't have a program that would cover me, and because they determined that the pain I was experiencing with a level of 8.5 on a scale of 10 was not life-threatening, they refused to help me because I didn't have the money to pay them. And so I discovered firsthand that going to an emergency room is not a way of getting yourself treated when there is something really horrific going on. And they decided that a pain level of 8.5 on a scale of 10 was not life-threatening. And so I had to drive myself home, because I had no one with me, with a pain level of 8.5, because I didn't have the money for a taxi, and it would have created more problems if I had left my car at the hospital. Walk home? I don't really know what the answer was. So the hospital actually created a life-threatening situation by refusing to figure out what was wrong and why I was in so much pain that I could hardly stand it. That I could hardly stand, literally. I was in so much pain. For whatever reason, after about 3 or 4 days, the pain finally went away, and no one has ever figured out what it was. So thankfully I lived through that, but it was an experience of finding out how much the systems didn't work, because the priority was on the policies and the programs and the procedures, not upon the person in front of them. Where this becomes even more pivotal, I suppose, is if the person that you save today is the person who saves you tomorrow. I remember seeing a video on the internet where someone deliberately illustrated this point, but my understanding is that these stories really have happened. In this particular case, it was set in an Asian culture where a young boy came in to a grocery store and said that his mother was very sick and needed some chicken soup to help her get better. And the shopkeeper understood that the boy didn't have money and decided to give him chicken soup anyway. Well, 20 years later, 25 years later, whatever it was, the shopkeeper has had a heart attack and is rushed to the hospital, and they save the man's life, but then present him with this humongous bill that he wouldn't be able to pay. And he explains everything to the doctor, and the doctor, forgive me for getting choked up as I say this, the doctor wrote across the bill, paid by 1 cup of chicken noodle soup, because it was the young man who was in that shopkeeper's store 20 years before, who had now become a doctor, saved his life. And if he hadn't helped that young man when he was a child, he wouldn't have been there to save him 20 years later when he had a heart attack. There's so many situations like that where people like to say what goes around comes around, and you're nice to someone because you have no idea if maybe they're the one who will help you at some future time. And if you don't help them, they won't be there to help you, and you will wind up dying as well. And so what it boils down to me is that the universe is far more interconnected and interdependent than most of us ever realize, mostly because we're standing too close to our own situations. On a different note, though, kind of same song, second verse, I guess, as some people say. it's not just that there's symbiotic relationships going on, but even beyond that, that there are problems that are not being addressed because they don't fit the programs. I was diagnosed with autism, and one of the ongoing problems relating to autism is that so much of the attention is focused on children. There are a lot of adults who are autistic who have aged out of the system or who were never diagnosed because when I was a child, they didn't know everything about autism that they know now. They could not have diagnosed my autism 40 years ago. When I was, 40 and 50 years ago when I was a child, they couldn't have diagnosed it, they didn't know. That means that there are a whole lot of autistic people who need help, who need intervention, who need accommodations, who need even just the basic test to confirm that they are autistic. I had to go through 50 years of life without ever being diagnosed, and there was an unbelievable amount of struggle that I still remember like it was yesterday. And when I was finally diagnosed, there were steps I could begin to take and explanations I could begin to give and accommodations I could begin to request. But there are a lot of people who don't have the money for a diagnosis. And I found a doctor who was willing to work with me and bring the price down to where I could afford it. But a lot of doctors weren't willing to do that. And it essentially means that there are a lot of autistic adults who have not been diagnosed, who can't qualify for disability because they have no official diagnosis, and who don't know how to request an accommodation or access helpful systems because they still don't know why they have so much trouble doing what they do, or doing basic things of life. I have always had trouble cooking because I can't interpret how much is enough. And so now I use a microwave that uses precise numbers, or I have developed a diet of things that don't need to be cooked to work around that. But at the time that I approached my doctor and said, I had been reading about autism in the news and on the internet and noting all sorts of different things that people said, this is autism and that's autism and that's autism. And so then I was making a list of how this corresponded to experiences in my own life. And so when I approached my doctor who diagnosed me, I said, either you have to verify that I have autism, or you have to explain to me how I can have 32 points of commonality and not be autistic. And he kind of laughed at that, but then we did a battery of like 18 tests over the course of several weeks. And he finally came to the conclusion that in 5 out of 6 areas I tested positive for autism. And it's not a disability, it's not an abnormality, it's just a different brain wiring that means I need to approach things differently. And when he said that, my first answer was, oh, well, that explains a lot. But it gave me a way of addressing my challenges that I didn't have before. The problem, coming back to our topic for today, is that when there are all these things that aren't addressed, and then we get into emotional and psychological wounds that aren't addressed, and people who need healing, but they're not getting it because they haven't been given a formal diagnosis. No one has agreed that anything is wrong or that anything needs healing. And in wrestling with all those different issues and challenges and people who aren't getting the help they need and so forth, I wrote a song a good number of years ago, but I'd like to share it with you now. Tiny child, frail and cold, forgotten and alone, watching the world of grown-up ones fuss and stew and moan, calling out for a guiding hand or a gentle, loving heart, wanting now and then at least of life to be a part. The moments pass, and then the years of struggle and of loss. The tears that would form a river much too wide to get across. The empty echo of longing words to be visible at last. But now the child's even harder to see, since so much time has passed. For the child has grown to be a man, tall and wise and strong. But deep within is the ancient ache to simply just belong. For the world has compassion everywhere for the child that can be seen, but forgets the child yet lives within all the memories that have been. In the evening's window, the image now reflects a working man, with no time for play, no time for fun, and no time to understand. One day moves into the next, and soon another year is past, and the child grows weary, keeping up with a world that moves too fast. In the mirror's glass, the child's brown hair has faded to shades of gray, and wrinkles line the weathered face and will not fade away. The skin has thinned and shows the veins and bones that give it life, and also bears the signs and scars of numerous years of strife. For the child has grown to be a man, tall and wise and strong, but deep within is the ancient ache to simply just belong. For the world has compassion everywhere for the child that can be seen, but forgets the child that yet lives within all the memories that have been. The children now, as men and women, roam across the land, searching now, just as before, for a gentle, caring hand. And the world's compassion to be complete must love the child that can't be seen, and remember the child in each of us, in all our memories that have been. And cut. And because there is only one track, this time probably all you have to do is hit play.
Yep.
Hands holding hands can hold the world. Hearts holding hearts can live anew. My hand to yours and your heart to mine can make every dream come true. Hands holding hands can hold the world. Heart Hearts holding hearts can live anew. My hand to yours and your heart to mine can make every dream come true. Hands holding hands can hold the world. Hearts holding hearts can live anew. My hand to yours and your heart to mine can make every dream come true.
Let's do it one more time, just because I want to try some different camera stuff.
Okay.
But that one's totally usable.
That one's good, you said?
Totally usable.
And I sounded good,
Yeah.
I hope? I'm never going to win a Grammy for my singing voice, but hopefully it's enough to convey the lyrics to the song. Hands holding hands can hold the world. Hearts holding hearts can live anew. My hand to yours and your heart to mine can make every dream come true. Hands holding hands can hold the world. Hearts holding hearts can live anew. My hand to yours and your heart to mine can make every dream come true. Hands holding hands can hold the world. Hearts holding hearts can live anew. My hand to yours and your heart to mine can make every dream come true. Wait a minute, what is this? It is not what I planned. Will all my hard work go to waste? Must I change the place I stand? And yet there seems to be a light in this new and different way. But I will have to let go of all that I knew yesterday. Remembering wisdom, remembering love, guidance for my footsteps, meaning from above, a tiny touch of heaven that one can think of. Remembering wisdom, remembering love. Each one has a different word, promising I'll be free. How am I supposed to know which one is true for me? The shoes that fit another's feet may not fit my own, and the path that others need to walk maybe there's a loan. Remembering wisdom, remembering love, guidance for my footsteps, meaning from above, a tiny touch of heaven that one can think of. Remembering wisdom, remembering love. Who is my true family? Who needs my love and care? What is it I can give to them? What can I truly share? I offer up my very best and let others make the choice, knowing only good will come when the right ones hear my voice. Remembering wisdom, remembering love, guidance for my footsteps, meaning from above, a tiny touch of heaven that one can think of. Remembering wisdom, remembering love.